The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, deletions, additions to the agenda? Hearing none, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Second? Did you second that, Tim?
I did.
Oh, Eric.
Right.
Can
All
somebody
those in favor?
shut off their mic? We're getting a lot of feedback.
All right, general public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak or share with the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Minutes of the August 26, 2020 meeting were in your packet. A motion would be in order.
I just passed on Kristen to switch Steve Martell from guest to Iowa board representative at that meeting. He was listed as a guest.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Lance. I saw that. I guess Wendy, I don't know if I know you sent that to Wendy too. Should I fix that and then send it on to Wendy, or do you think Wendy can handle that? I don't mind.
There's only a couple.
I'll let
If
Wendy
you
know.
want to make that, okay.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I can make whatever changes if people send them, or then it just has to jump through another hoop. But if there's a lot to work with, I'll do it. No problem.
So with that change, moving Steve from guest to member, a motion would be in order for approval.
I'll move that to Clarence. Move the adoption.
Second,
I'll second.
Lance, all those in favor, you could just wave if you want. That would be that little trick I learned from Clarence the other night. Passes unanimously. Warrants were received in your email. Motion to be in order for the warrants.
I'll move to approve the warrants.
Second,
I'll second.
second by Lance. All those in favor by a wave would be great. Motion passes unanimously. Superintendents report. Before I turn it over to Chris, I just want to let you all know that today I received from the Secretary of Education the letter that says we can officially hire Chris, that he is a candidate. The Agency of Education has completed their statutory background check process required for superintendent applicant Chris Sell, and I support Mr. Sell's hiring as a superintendent. With this advice and Mr. Sell having satisfactorily undergone the statutory background check process, the Greater Rutland County Supervisory District may proceed with the hiring of Christopher Sell as superintendent. So it's now official.
Congratulations. Does that mean we still have to pay him for what he's been doing?
I think that maybe he owes us for a couple of months.
Yeah, I owe you my life. So, well, thank you. I was hoping that letter would say something different. No, thank you. So I know we've already been through this. I've spoken with each of you at our individual boards, so I'm going to kind of bypass and I really want to kind of just discuss the move to step 3 that recently, yesterday, that Dan French announced that will take place on Saturday. So I know there are some questions from just the community, yourselves, in terms of what that might look like. And I was talking with Lisa Madison this morning about this as we put together this learning model, set with the building administrators and with the teaching staff. We kind of forward thinking because we looked at what the step 3 model would look like, and we looked at our current enrollment and what we could do within our schools, and we had placed a lot of step 3 measures a lot of these things are already in place. So the transition from step 2 to step 3 will be very subtle for most of us. As you look at our classrooms, there won't be many shifts. I think there will be some schools where just due to their much larger enrollment, we'll be shifting from a pod for a small group, particularly the high school setting, to allowing them to move to more like more mixed classrooms again, so they can actually move through their schedule while doing through the course of the day. Elementary schools, some of these shifts might be looking at allowing our students to move to their specials as opposed to having the special teachers move to their classrooms, which I think our teachers would greatly appreciate on both sides. But in doing some of these things, one of the things I want to make sure is that we're not just rushing back to to step 3. We've done a lot with the guidance and the recommendations from the state Department of Health to ensure a pretty strong start. And we want to make sure that we don't undo anything by just kind of rushing through and just saying we're there. We know that this is going to be a long process for us, that just because we move to step 3 doesn't mean that 2 weeks from now that things might look differently. So we do have to be cautiously optimistic as we proceed with this. So some of the subtle shifts that will occur, obviously masks will still be worn. We'll still have to do the daily, health checks, screening, temperature checks. So those things will still take in place. The buses will not change. The buses have always been on step 3. So in terms of what that will look like and how we handle that, there'll be no shifts there. Schools will be allowed to use gyms and cafeteria facilities with certain restrictions. It doesn't mean we're going back to where we were at last February, where we can just have all the kids back at the cafeteria, all the kids back in the gym. There's still certain restrictions in place that we have to have. Obviously, with social distancing, we look at having small sections, small groups. This will really be going back to more of a school-to-school decision in terms of how best to utilize those facilities. Ideally, we'd love to have our students and move out of the classrooms to have lunch in the cafeteria for a variety of reasons, but we're not going to do so and just kind of throw the safety and health and well-being of the staff and students to the side when doing that. So we'll explore what is feasible, what is possible in each school with each of those facilities. But we also have to make sure that we do have the proper cleaning and sanitizing process in place. So we may have to stagger the use. So if we do have a gym class or being held inside our gym, that we don't have a class come in 2 minutes later, that we may have to take a period off, allows us to clean and sanitize that gym for the next period to come in or the next group to come in. Obviously, you've seen through all the papers, the big news with this is the fall sports can resume. So we had a bit of I don't want to say a setback, but I think there are a lot of people that expected first fall sports to resume this week. While Dan French and AOE has been very clear that we were beginning step 2, but they gave us the timeline of the 26th. So on the 26th, we can begin fall sports. There are restrictions and safety guidelines in place that we have to adhere to, in regard to masks still being worn by spectators, officials, coaches, players. We are restricted in terms of the crowd size on property. So it's something we're working with each of our building administrators and athletic directors and coaches to make sure that we do this. It's something we have to be very careful, because we know each of our communities, that athletic contest typically draws a good crowd. So we are going to be asking our public, to think about the kids. That we've worked hard to get to this point, to get the kids back into school, to get these kids back into the competitions, that we don't want to undo this because of just making some foolish decisions. So we ask the public, if we have a limit crowd size to 150, that we have to keep that 150, not to be upset with a coach, a principal, an athletic director. These are the guidance which we have to operate. And like I said, but if we don't do a good job of this, we will lose, we'll lose that, and we'll probably lose fall sports. We don't want to do that. So we also have some more, I talked before about more flexibility in terms of how we group and move students. A lot of our schools were already finding ways to have our students move safely throughout schools, do this, that, but like I said, we will be looking at each building, what we can and cannot do with regards to this. And the big question that we always have is about our learning model. the learning model that we currently have is not going to shift. So we will stay with the 4-day in person. We will have the 1-day remote. Next week, we'll be looking at be meeting with building administrators on Wednesday to discuss a timeline for a return to in-person instruction. I also will be meeting with the union to discuss a return to that time as well, in terms of when we feel it is safe and appropriate to do so. The one thing that we will be recommending, at least for the immediate future, is regardless on that Wednesday, if it's a in-person or a remote, that we would like to stay with a 12 o'clock dismissal instead of a 2 o'clock dismissal on that day, for reasons being that there still will be cleaning that will have to be done in the buildings, more so now that the students will be in the building on that day. There'll be certain procedural things that still need to be taken care of, collaboration, planning, the things on those lines, as well as just give staff just a bit of a breather midweek. But like I said, we'll have more information, and I think as we move into our local board meetings, we'll be able to discuss that timeline further. All right. Do we have any questions on step 3?
Chris, this is Kristen Ross. I just, if the decision is made to go, or whatever the timeline is for doing 5 days in person with that Wednesday, is that'll probably come before we have a local district meeting, right? I'm guessing.
Potentially, yes. Well, I mean, we may look at the timeline, but one of the things we have to take in consideration is on Wednesdays, as with any other day, there are childcare issues, and it's abrupt change of schedule. So we want to make sure that if, when that change occurs, that we give families, staff members more than enough time to prepare and make appropriate arrangements for that. But that'll be something which, like I said, obviously, I think Wells is the first meeting October 7th. But if the decision comes before then, we will discuss with the boards how best to handle that, and I'll get the information to you. Okay.
Yeah, that would be my request, is to not decide 1 week and then have it start the next week, to give family and board members enough time to sort of spread the word with some lead time, if that's possible. I know, again, everything's changing pretty quickly, so hopefully changing for the good, toward the good. But yeah, that was just my concern, is just getting the word out there so that people don't have to sort of switch on a dime, I guess.
Right. It won't be. It won't be like the following week. We know that. I mean, there are too many things that need to occur. We have to shift some other schedules, and there are things we need to take a look at, obviously, with our, teacher preps. Just making sure that we're still following terms of CBA and the special education considerations that we need to just to explore. So there's some logistical things that need to happen before we make that shift. But like I said, that families will know, we'll have more than enough time to prepare for that. But the one thing that was also asked to is, as we move into step 3, remote learning will still be an option for families, because we do believe that there will still be a concern, at least at this time. There are concerns with just with what's going on for a variety of reasons. So out of respect to those families, those families will still be able to continue with remote. So.
All right, are there any other questions for Chris? If not, we'll move on to Lisa for Assistant Superintendent. Do we want Lisa to address the grading task force during her report, or would you prefer to keep it at the bottom under new business? Hearing nothing, we'll keep it at the bottom under new business.
I take it, Lisa, that there's some that have not seen this yet. Is it the same one I've seen twice now?
So I think we're going to be talking more about grading, Lynette. We actually, and Lisa will probably discuss this, we discussed the transcript and we took action at Corey Valley. So we're talking more just about grading. So it was attached to your packet, so.
Yep. Okay.
The floor is yours, Lisa.
Thank you. You all have my report, and the only update I was going to give was related to the transcript. As Lisa Meiser was just saying, the Corey Valley board approved moving forward with the transcript development on Monday night. They also identified some external funding that is going to support that work. And so that's fabulous. We were able to not have to even expend the full amount to do that. And so we're going to get moving with that. And in terms of grading later in the agenda, it is the same presentation as last month. There are a few new links in it, just some additional information that I added specifically related to the transcript section. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look at that. The Corey Valley Board already saw that with the new links. And I went to all of the local boards and gave that presentation this past month. So I was not planning to go through it again tonight. It was just attached in case there were any questions that people had and we needed to go back and refer to any of those materials. So that's what I have for you this evening, unless there's any questions.
Okay. I do think since we did take action, and the board can certainly weigh in on this, on the transcript for Corey Valley, that we need to then begin the focus back to the grading task force. And I did read in here, and I don't know, maybe it was in the other one, about the movement for Pulteney. Did I read correctly that the 8th grade class is going to transition to 1 to 4 currently? Are they doing that right now?
No, I'm not sure quite where that is, but
oh, they're doing that
all
in
of
the fall of 2021.
Yes, in the fall of
Okay.
2021, we would have all of the students 7 through 12 transitioning. And I've been talking to Joe DeBonis about that. I actually have a meeting with him on Friday to go over some goal setting together and talk about how we're going to get in there and get some professional development training for the staff embedded in their work this year once things settle down with reopening, so that we can make sure that that's a smooth transition for them.
And then will Pulteney Elementary also be transitioning to jump rope as well, along with the high school?
Yes, all of Pulteney, Wells, and Middletown, both Pulteney schools, Wells and Middletown, would all be coming on board with jump rope, assuming that continues to be our platform. We are intending to just go back out and look. It's been about 5 years since the district looked at different platforms and had a committee that examined what was on the market for us. It seems a good time to do that before we train the Southern schools in a program, to make sure that it continues to be the program that is able to best meet our needs. So we are going to take a look at that this year. At this time, we don't anticipate a change because, again, jump rope tends to just be the one that everyone talks about when they talk about standards-based grading and proficiency-based learning. But we will do due diligence and go back out there and make sure that it's still the best option for us.
Okay, I guess my question to that would be, how much time is that going to take away from actually looking at the grading and how going one? There seems to be still some discrepancy within the SU about if everyone's moving to 1 to 4, if some people, I mean, I don't know if Rutland Town, Lynette, do you want to speak to that? Are you guys on board with going with the 1 to 4 for grading? Because we talked about it last time, and then Matt.
Definitely, we're on board. Tim, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a positive conversation we had at the last.
Yep.
Okay, I just don't want us to lose momentum with the movement and everybody being on the same grading by going and looking for another platform, I guess. So, but as long as everyone is on board, then, and how much time do we anticipate we would be looking at other platforms? I mean, are we at the place looking at other platforms where we're going to say, oh, this one might be interesting, so we're going to let another school use this one for a semester?
Yeah, I think we'd really be looking at demos from sales reps with a small subcommittee to do that at this point. We're pretty familiar with the functionality of jump rope. We know how it works, and so that makes it a little bit easier to do comparisons with other companies. If it, once we have our criteria established, the things that we love about how that works, the visuals and things that are simple for people, color coding, those kind of pieces, it makes it a little bit easier to go out and compare to other products. So I don't think it's going to slow us down, Lisa. I think it'll just be a quick subcommittee that makes sure that we're not overlooking something that may have changed or come to market in the last few years.
Okay, because I guess the second piece of that is the school community, i.e. parents, who we are still working with and helping to adjust to jump rope and understand that and what it looks like. So I'm a senior parent leaving this system. I have a pretty good grasp on it, but we have younger parents that we have now started to indoctrinate, I will say, with jump rope. I hope we keep that in mind, that if we think we're changing platforms every 5 years, that's not even the cycle of a child's educational career. And we already have had a couple of nightmares, I will say, with transcripts and grading and the platform. So I would just hope the subcommittee would keep that in mind, because you're going to spend a lot of time re-educating parents, and that's where frustration comes from. And we've heard that from other districts and parents. And I think that unless there's something amazing out there, at a substantial savings, I can't imagine the reason to move to another platform when you think about the number of students we have in this SU and the number of parents you would need to be re-educating. My personal opinion, board members can certainly weigh in. Okay, hearing none.
Oh, hold on a second. I did have one question. If about jump rope, if you're that familiar with it, why is it such a long timeline to implement it into these other schools?
So we just need to make sure that our teachers are trained in how to use it. It's a slightly different way of grading, where rather than taking a body of work and assessing it against a standard, the teachers are taking multiple assignments, and when students are completing work, they're assessing them against standards and tagging them to them. So it's just a slightly different approach. It just takes a little bit of time to wrap your brain around and rethink for teachers. And again, with everything else they have going on this year, all the new technology that they're learning, all the new things that they're mastering, we want to make sure that we give it enough time to really do what they need to do now for reopening, and then have time to be ready for this later. Some of the schools have been piloting it, and some of the teachers in the individual schools have been piloting it in the southern schools. So it won't be completely unfamiliar to everyone. But for people who really haven't interacted with it at all, we just want to make sure that they're really familiar with it. Because of course, next year they're going to have to hit the ground day one ready to use it, which is a little bit higher level of skill. You don't want their learning curve to be on a period of time when they're actually using it to grade students in real time.
Right. Yeah, I know Wells has been piloting it for 2 years now, and I'm not even sure about Middletown, but that's why I asked. And I did have another question in your report. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate more on the last part of it, the equity initiatives.
Sure. Anything specific that you're wondering about, or?
Yeah, just let's see. Let's see, the teaching racial justice and anti-racism initiatives. I was just curious if you could elaborate more on a lot of that stuff.
Sure. So the first bullet refers to coordinating with the staff committee. I struggle to remember the full name of their committee title because it's quite lengthy. But they are just sort of getting started on some teacher directed activities. They're trying to do some planning together to really think about what they as a group might be able to contribute to our district work in anti-racism work and equity work. So they've had a few meetings. They're really just getting started. And so we participate in their meetings. We support the leadership of that group who are facilitating. If they have questions or things that they need, we participate in as many of them as we possibly can. And then try and make sure that the things that they're talking about are aligned with the things that we think need to happen at the board level and the policy level and the systems level, and just try and help make sure all those pieces are working together a little bit. Again, it's still early, so they haven't gotten to the point yet of setting specific goals or things that they hope to accomplish this year. They're still really trying to frame the issue and figure out what their role is, I think. And then the second piece is just a class that I'm taking. The Equity Literacy Institute is Paul Gorski is one of the facilitators. He's done a lot of work with the Vermont Principals Association and is facilitating a cohort of schools through the VPA that are doing equity work. And then he just offered this, it's a 5-week series of different topics related to the equity work that he's doing. And he brings in guest speakers who are educators from all over the country, and they talk about the work that they're doing with equity in the different schools and programs that they're affiliated with. So lots of ideas and just thinking to do. And there's some articles and resources and things that they mention in the course. So then I get to keep track of those. And I have shared some of them back with the committee, along with some of my notes from their presentations. And also some of them are just things for me to look at or share with Chris or our admin team of things that we might want to look at and think about as we begin and really engage in this work too.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Yep.
I'm sorry, are there any other questions for Lisa? Clarence, yeah, one. Clarence, could you take the meeting for 5 minutes for me? I have a phone call I have to take.
Yeah, we can take care of that.
Thank you very much.
All right, no problem. If there's no more motions ordered to approve the consent agenda, would someone like to move that, please?
Moved.
So moved by Eric. Second.
I'll second.
Who was that?
That was Lance.
Lance seconded the motion. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye or wave their support. Those opposed? Those opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried, so declare it.
Hey, Clarence,
Yes,
before we move on, there's 2 more phone numbers or callers. I was wondering if we can identify 72 and 26.
Jim Mumford, 72.
Oh, thank you.
72. Okay, Jim, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Who 26 is 26 or 24 you're looking for, Eric?
26.
26? Who would that be?
.518 number.
Five 26. As this is a public meeting, someone doesn't have to tell us they're here. All they have to do is look at the agenda and sign in. So we'll just know that there's someone present that's unidentified. If they don't choose to unmute and tell us, that's the best you can do for the minutes, I would say, Eric.
Okay. Yep. Let's try it.
Now we'll move on to Personnel, we have resignations. You received that in your packet. Nancy Plant,
Nancy's the relocation, Clarence. She's
Oh,
been shifted off
relocation.
yeah, she's been shifted off the SU to the Quarry Valley budget.
Oh, okay. So that's just a
change.
She's going to Quarry Valley. Okay. Well, so it's a resignation for the GRSCSU, right? But it will be transferred into Quarry Valley. And the other resignation are Sharon Durkee and Heather Reynolds. Both resigned. What's the pleasure of the board on these resignations?
I make a motion to accept the resignations as presented.
Okay. Motion
I'll
by Jim, seconded by
Lance.
Lance, seconded the motion.
Yep. Yes.
Any further discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by waving or saying aye. Those opposed? Seeing none, the motion's carried, and I so declare it. We have contract recommendations, teachers, and contract recommendations. What's the pleasure of the board here? Chris, maybe you could explain this to us, or Louis. What are these? These are annual stipends that we're.
So the first one is the horizontal move for Ryan McIntyre. And then we have a new special ed para for Kevin Matchin. And then the extracurricular are mentor stipends. Those are annual stipends for mentors to mentor new staff. And then the last section is all of the non-union staff. And this is just something that's been carried forward for each month until increases are either approved or denied. Kind of just been tabled each month.
These are the non-union, all the non-union people that have been tabled month to month are what this
correct
FY20 list is. Okay. The stipends are part of the extracurricular stipends. Is that part of the master agreement?
They're not necessarily part of the master agreement, but that's a requirement that we have mentors. And so these are all people that are employed by the SU. They may be mentoring employees in other buildings. The way we handle it is the district that has the mentee is the district that is in the end responsible financially. But the contract is drawn in the district where the mentor is normally paid. So, for example, if you have a special educator who is an SU employee who is mentoring a Wells Springs teacher, a local teacher, the contract will be an SU contract, but then the SU will bill Wells Springs because that's where the mentee is contracted. And so Wells Springs will have the financial responsibility for that.
Is the amount of these stipends, is this the same amount that has been right along for years, or is this an increase in stipend?
Lisa, jump in if you'd like, but I think there's two different amounts. One is a representative of a first-year mentor, and a first-year the mentee is a first-year teacher, and then the smaller amount is the second year.
Yeah. So Clarence, the level 1 mentor stipend, which is for brand new teachers or teachers that have made a significant role shift, say from like being a special educator to being a second grade teacher or something very, very different. Those stipends are the same as they were last year. the level 2 stipends, which is for staff who are more experienced. It might be a second-year teacher, or it could be an experienced teacher from another state who is coming to Vermont for the first time. Those stipends are less than they were last year. We adjusted them for the program because the amount of hours required for a second-year mentee are significantly less than the amount of hours required for a first-year person. Obviously, brand new people are going to need more support than people who have some experience. And so we reduced that stipend this year. We did a restructuring of the mentoring program. We also separated the training. There used to be several days of training up front, or full days anyway, and we eliminated that. We went to a 2-hour orientation for mentors, so you might see a $50 difference in some of them. If you do, that means that they attended the training this year. And then we embedded the professional development for mentors within the calendar year. So all mentors are getting ongoing professional development in how to be effective mentors and how to support new teachers.
But I guess my question is simply, the $450 fee, is that the same price that mentors received last year for doing this work?
No, it's less.
It's less. Okay. All right. So we motions in order to approve or dispose of all of this stuff on whatever the board's position is. So please move and be specific on what you're moving.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the professional staff, the support staff under just Kevin McCain, and the extracurricular portions. Those are the only ones non-union I think we need discussion on.
Okay. It's the motion to approve those 3 areas. Is there a second? Second by Lance.
Yep.
All right. Any discussion or questions about any of these individuals, or anyone that need any more information about what it is? If not, all those in favor say aye, or say aye. Wave their hand. Those opposed. Those opposed. Hearing none. Motion's carried. All right. Now the non-union staff that was listed here that was tabled from last meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
Clarence, I'd like to make a motion to table that again, seeing how negotiations are in a stalemate right now.
Okay, you moved that they continue to be tabled?
Correct.
All right, motion to continue to table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Jim. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say, all those in favor wave their hand, say aye. Yell at me something. Down hands. Those opposed. Motion's carried. I so declare it. I see that our fearless leader has returned. So at this point, we'll give it back to Lisa, and we're to it's up to open positions informational is where we are. All right.
So everyone, thank you very much, Clarence. I'm sorry about that. I try to schedule my life so I don't get interrupted during meetings, but it was unavoidable. So open positions are in your packet. We do still have several open positions. We are advertising for them, and as those positions come up and we have applicants, we are hiring them as needed. So we're not necessarily always waiting for a board meeting and doing that under COVID. Unpaid leave, you have a leave of absent request, the letter in your packet. So a motion would be in order to accept the unpaid leave. Chris, was there anything you wanted to add about that?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory with the letter, so.
Okay.
I'll make a
So is
motion.
there a
I'm sorry, I'll make the motion that we accept the leave of absence request from Nancy Roberts.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second. I'll second.
Second by Eric. Oh, Lance.
By Lance.
All those in favor, wave. Motion passes. We're to finance with Lewis. Lewis, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. So I have three pieces of information for you tonight. So the first one is just a quick update on food service balances. So this topic was brought to each local board. And each local board made a decision on how to proceed. The food service balances were provided to each board as well as to the SU board. Corey Valley and Rutland Town decided to continue to try to collect those balances with more attempts to letters. So that's how we're going to proceed. And it may be brought back up at a future meeting. And Wells Springs did decide to write off any outstanding balances and start with a clean slate moving forward. So that's the update on that. Is there any questions on that? And the next item before we get into budget is just an update on COVID funds, CRF money. So late this afternoon, there was an email that was sent out by Wendy with a PDF document, which included all of the information that was sent for the CRF application. As of this point, our CRF application totaled $893,000. This is a revision. My original application that I submitted about 2 weeks ago was for $675,000. I revised that. They opened the window back up, and just due to what we've seen in the last few weeks and the additional needs, we did bump that up to 893. This was our last opportunity to change that number. At this point, our grant application should be generated based on that amount, and we won't be able to, we'll be able to make revisions while staying in the same amount, but we won't be able to increase it. So if we were to exceed that, those amounts will start hitting local funding. It is believed, based on the action that the legislators took last week, that there should be enough funds at the state level to cover everybody's CRF grant applications. What they did was they had everybody submit preliminary data, and that totaled approximately $70 million statewide. There was only about $50 million available. That information was brought to the legislators, and they did increase the funding so that there was enough money to cover everybody's unbudgeted CRF expenses. All of the amounts that I've been talking about is unbudgeted money that we're looking for reimbursement, 100% reimbursement for, without any ed fund impact. So I can go through some of the sheets that went that were emailed today, just to give you a sense of what we included in the grant application. Let me just switch over to that document. So the sheet is actually several pages long. So the first page is our expenses through 8/31. This only includes FY21. Our FY20 expenses were only about $20,000. Those are also included in our application, but I did not include those details in this report. So expenses through 8/31, I've listed the different types of expenses by district and then the total. So as of August 31st, we've spent about $145,000. Most of that being in the technology category. The second page is our cumulative expense as of, I believe it was September 18th. This is only for money that we've actually paid. It doesn't include anything that we've encumbered or projected. It's just items that we've paid. So as of September 18th, we had spent $185,000 SU-wide on COVID-related expenses. All of these expenses have been coded to separate funds within your districts. so that we can clearly track what's COVID related and what's not, and so that when we get the reimbursement, it should net out to zero. The next page are items that we've encumbered. So POs have been created, but bills have not been paid yet. So that total is $284,000. And as you can see through all these sheets, the bulk of the money is being spent in two categories: technology and maintenance. The technology expenses are the Chromebooks for students, laptops for teachers, cameras, and all of those things. The maintenance supplies are cleaners, plexiglasses, social distancing supplies, cleaning supplies, and items like that. So page 4 is projected expenses. This one I'll go through a little bit in more detail. So we're projecting $401,000 in expenses of items that we haven't paid for yet or encumbered. And most of this is staffing. So what we've done is in each building, we've allowed principals to hire a local building sub. This is someone that we're hiring locally. They will be an employee. We're paying $13 an hour. This position is available from now until December 31st. And it's just a floater for the building so that they can cover unexpected leaves on a daily basis, whether there's people out because of COVID and whether it's a planned absence or an unplanned absence, or somebody's out sick. And it's just, right now, there's not a lot available subs through Kelly, and we wanted to make sure that buildings had sufficient coverage in their building. So we've allowed them each to hire one sub building-wise, and that was advertised in School Spring. In addition to that, we've hired through Kelly Services one floater sub vacant. We've created one floater sub vacancy so that there's another position in the building that's available each day to cover filled positions and unplanned absences. So in theory, each building has two people available to them, one through Kelly Services and one locally. And both of those positions are being funded 100% through COVID and are included in this application. The other thing that's in here for staffing is we've advertised for 4 maintenance positions. Unfortunately, to this date, we have not received any applications, but just due to the increased cleaning, we've advertised for additional custodial work so that they can kind of be floaters around the SU and fill in where needed. Hopefully, we get some applications for that because there is a need, and those are funded 100% through this application. And then the last area is we've included some overtime for a few different areas, including maintenance, human resources, and local buildings overtime. If there was overtime for technology, for our technology staff, and if there was any office staff overtime that was needed just due to the reopening. So those are included in here. All of these items are COVID related. And then the 5th page is just our cumulative expense September to December. And the way it's broken out like this is because it was needed in order to complete the application, I needed to sort and filter all the expenses by these different timing categories to be able to provide this information to the state. If you go to the final page, that just shows what our total COVID application for FY21 was, so $872,000. And you can see the details by district and by category. Like I said earlier, the total application was $893,000. The $21,000 difference was the FY20 expenses, which we have talked about at previous meetings. That money has all been moved to a separate fund, so it wasn't included in your fund balances. Any questions on COVID expenses before we move on to budget?
So Louis, the only thing, thank you very much. This is great, and I think this will help a lot of people. I know at Quarry Valley there were some questions about that, and this is very extensive, and it certainly is helpful, and it'll be wonderful to get that reimbursement. I think having 2 subs per building is, I'm sure building administrators you're much beloved by them for that. For the 4 additional custodians, is it possible you could send that advertisement to us locally? I think that may be something we could put up around our individual towns. That might be a little more localized rather than looking on School Spring.
Okay, I can make that. I'll make that note. Do you want me to have Wendy just send that to the full board?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I'd like to have it to be able to post at the library and around places. I think that might be something that, locally here in town, I might have people looking for, particularly something short term like that, but it's not something they're going to be looking at School Spring for a job for something like that. So.
Okay. So, and just to add, all of these positions that we've been adding, they're getting at-will contracts. So they're all temporary positions, $13 an hour, no benefits. And they're on an as-needed basis, which at this point is full-time until, we're saying until December, but we'll have to reevaluate after the fall and we see how things are going.
Sure, understood. I know in every community we have people that are out of work or on shortened hours, so something like this could be helpful for people. So thank you.
There's one other thing.
Louis, I had a question about the floating sub that could cover teachers where the need be. Are we going to get in trouble with the labor organization about more days in a row covering a teacher where they wind up becoming they have to join the union, or they have to, there's some provision in there about long-term subs.
So these aren't long-term sub positions. They're all non-union sub positions. Neither master agreement, neither the support staff nor the teacher master agreement have subs in the recognition clause. So these are not paras. They are not teachers. They're sub positions. They may be a sub. They may be a para for 2 hours and a teacher for 2 hours and a custodian for 2 hours. So their position is changing throughout the day, and that's really why we design these as kind of new positions, and they are temporary at-will positions.
So where they can operate all 3, they aren't going to fall in under any one labor agreement. That was my question. Okay.
Yep. So the other thing I was just going to say is too that the CRF money only goes through the end of December. So anything that's spent after January or after the end of December would no longer qualify. But we do have another pot of money available to us. It's called the ESSER money, ESSR. That money is awarded to us similar to our title money. So we get an allocation. Our GRCSU allocation is $446,000. And we have until September 30th of 2021 to spend those funds.
Okay. Louis, I have one other. You said that the legislature approved additional money above after the projection came in. The legislature approved more money. Was that money approval in the budget that's going to be going to the governor, or was that a separate bill that got approved? Is that approved it in law, or is that still waiting for the governor's signature?
Unfortunately, I don't know the exact answer to that. I know it was discussed last year, and it came across to us like it was a done deal. So I'm not sure if it's something that's still waiting on the governor or not.
Okay, maybe because if the legislature approved additional money, it would seem to me like somebody got to sign off and agree to that. I just wondered if it was a separate bill, or was that, or is that still tied up with the budget? I mean, as late as today, they had the Townsend Amendment, which made have all insurance on a sliding scale that we happen to get notice that we got ahead of, and I think it's been taken out of the bill at the final saying. But That's
Yeah.
that's crazy that some of this stuff is going on. That's why I wondered if indeed the money. I mean, you sound like it's a done deal, but until the ink's dry on the governor's signature, I don't count anything.
Yeah, we did get an email with some of the details. I'd have to go back though and look at. I'm trying to skim through it right now to see if it had a bill number. It may be Bill H969. But I mean, they did express to us that the legislators are looking to cover all of our unbudgeted expenses, so that it shouldn't be an issue. I can get further details and get back to you on that.
It was S-254 that was the budget bill where they were trying to amend. So it's a different bill. So that's probably was an off budget item.
Okay. Any other questions on CRF? Okay, so budget, FY22 budget. So included in the packet should have been the budget timeline. It's very similar to last year. I'll go through it briefly. So there's two sides to it. You have the SU side and the local district side. Basically, on the SU side, in the month of September, we start the preliminary discussions, get feedback from the board as to what they want the budget to look like in the first draft, get any ideas about budget increases, decreases, parameters, new proposals, anything like that. We present during the month of October, I'll work with central office administrators to develop the first draft. And then in October, we'll present the first draft to the SU board, get any feedback from the SU board in October, and then hopefully present a final draft to the SU board in November for approval. The reason for the short timeline on the SU board is because we need final numbers so that we can develop our local district board. So the longer we keep the SU budget open, the further it delays the local district budgets. In the past, we've talked about finance committees and whether we want those or not. I'm open to either way. I believe in the past, both local and SU boards have been not in favor of having a finance committee. They want all of the information to be discussed with the full board. So if you want to change that, I'm open to it, whatever the board wants to do. On the local district side, so this will go to your local boards next month. We'll have those preliminary discussions in October with the local boards. We'll talk about budget parameters, priorities, stuff like that, increases, decreases. And then we'll present the first draft of the local board budgets in November. We'll review that again in December, and we'll look for an approval. Either some boards have done it in December, but the latest we can do it is mid-January. So we'll be looking for an approved budget by mid-January, and that is so that we can get budget data finalized and sent to the printers for annual board packets, town meeting packets, those boards that are still local boards and not unified. There's tighter timelines with the local towns to have that information for the town reports. We do have a little bit more flexibility with the two unified districts because we create that packet ourselves, so the timeline's not as strict. So at this time, unless there's any questions about this specific questions about the timeline, I'd open it up to the board to discuss the parameters of the SU budget for next month. I'd imagine we should probably go into executive session at some point to discuss personnel. But just overall, I think we can start the discussion here about overall budget parameters, and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
So what's the pleasure of the board? Let's start first. Is the board interested in a finance committee Or is it the pleasure of the board to continue that we all receive the information and work on the budget?
I think we all ought to work on it. We aren't that large a group.
Sounds good. And it's a pretty short time frame as well, so.
Except I would like to consider people who have more expertise than certainly I do to be involved.
I'm not sure what that means, Meredith.
That I am interested in a finance committee.
So the finance committee would be made up of board members.
I understand that.
Are there other people interested in it?
Did we appoint people to finance committee and when we had our local reorganizations? I don't remember whether we did or not.
That would be for your local, we did not, and that would be for your local board for finance, I think, so.
Well, I thought we put, I thought maybe we selected one so there would be a SU finance committee that comprised members from every board. I thought, and under reorganization, we did that, but I'm not 100% positive. I think Wells Springs, if I remember correctly, we elected Courtney. Do you remember it that way, Eric? To serve on a finance committee because she understands that stuff. That's her line of work. But I didn't know if everybody else did or not.
We have not had a finance committee since the merger. The boards have not been in favor of it. I have brought it up just because boards have brought it up before, so I just wanted to give everybody that opportunity.
I think Matt decided, or it was decided when Matt was chair, that we wouldn't have the finance committee, that the executive committee would operate in that function. And then we wound up with the whole board doing it, so.
I'm certainly in favor of the whole board. We're talking about a very short time period here. And the SU budget certainly has a huge impact on our local budget. So from my perspective, I think we should all be participants in this. Once you set the SU budget, you're locked into that to move forward with your local budget.
Does it make sense to allow other board members from the other boards to participate?
At Quarry Valley, we've always taken the draft to our full board and discussed it and reviewed it. And that's why from October to November, but we're receiving the final presentation, so to speak, in November and being asked to approve that at that meeting. So historically, Quarry Valley has taken it and reviewed it at the meeting in between prior to accepting it at the SU board.
Yes, so I mean, for the SU meetings, all board members are welcome to attend, whether they're representatives or not. They just can't vote. But November board meetings at the local level would be the good opportunity for you to bring that first draft to the local board to review, because all those meetings should happen before the finalization at the November SU meeting.
Lisa, if I could,
Absolutely.
I prefer to have the majority of the board instead of a committee. In the past, when we used to have the executive committee that did the budget, what we found was when it was finally noticed or when we finally came to the final draft, there were too many people asking a lot of questions that it's too late in the procedure to go all the way back. So the more people that know what's going on, the better. And everybody would be informed and we won't have a lot of that repeat business on the final draft.
So is it the consensus of the board to move forward with the SU board working and preparing the SU budget?
Meredith, this is Kristen Ross. Were you thinking that if we had a finance committee that there would be additional meetings in between SU meetings that group would then meet? Is that what you were thinking of?
Yeah, and I am concerned about, I mean, not that Clarence and Eric can't do a great job in communicating that to our boards, but I feel like Courtney, who is an accountant, would be very beneficial to be on that board. And maybe that's what we have to do as a Wellsprings board, is encourage her to attend so that we can make this work. I don't mean to put a stopper in this by any means. I just feel that finance is the one thing that I don't feel like I have any sort of significant confidence in. Let's put it that way. In terms of the entire budget, I've looked at enough budgets. I understand a lot of it, but there's an awful lot that I would rather have an accountant looking at.
And I would certainly encourage the Wellsprings board to have Courtney attend those SU board meetings, as any board that has other members that they'd like to participate. So there's, as Clarence said, or Lewis said, everyone is welcome to attend the meetings.
Yeah, I believe that's the right answer for us to move forward. And as you say, we have a tight timeline, so that makes sense.
Okay. With that consensus, what are the priorities and parameters for the budget we would like to give to Chris or Lewis or the SU in general?
The suggestion I would make is, where we're at with everything else, all things being considered, that we just get a level funded budget proposed to us, and we add a line to it that's called contingency, and we'll put some money in there at the very end when we decide what the budget looks like.
Anybody else?
I think that sounds good.
And I think, kind of according to Lewis, if we stay kind of the same path with the COVID money running out, there we do have that other pot, he said, of I think 446 that has to be used by September of 2021. Correct, Lewis?
Correct. So we would start spending that money in January, this January coming, so January 2021, and we'd have about 9 months to spend those funds.
Okay. So are there any so the parameter is a level funded budget with a contingency line item. Are there any particular priorities that this board would like to direct the SU or the SU central office staff to include?
I think we need to take a hard look at every position and make sure that we actually need the position. And if we don't, then it should be put on the table.
Would it be helpful to have, in the past, we've received at the beginning of budget work, each position at the SU level and how that position is funded, whether it's grant funded, 60% grant, like that. I think that's probably helpful to know. And then it also has a line that tells you what each position is, whether it's bookkeeper, accountant, whatever. Is that something you provide for us again, Lewis?
Yes, as part of the budget presentation, you'll get many pages. The first page will be the budget, the general fund budget, which will show the summary line items, and then you'll get a staffing sheet, which will show each staff member. It'll show their position, their FTE, how much of their position is funded locally, and what their salary is.
Is there other information like that the board would like as when we meet next month and look at the first round?
I don't know if this is Kristen Lewis. I don't know if this is something that it is done. I'm trying to remember. Can we look at like how much tuition money each district brings in, if that's relevant to that particular district? Like obviously Ira's not going to have that because they don't have actual schools, but can we also look at that?
So it's
Just
not
because-
really relevant. It's not really relevant to GRCSU. So GRCSU is just looking at mainly central office budget. There's three main sections of the GRCSU budget. There's central office, which would be the general fund. That includes the business department, the technology department, and then the administration department, which would be Chris and Lisa. And so that's the main SU budget. And then the second piece is the special ed budget, which is handled completely differently. And we can talk about that in a minute. And that would include all of the special ed positions, both administration all the way down to parents in the buildings, teachers in the buildings, tuition, all costs related to special ed. And then the third piece is the bill back, which we've looked at. And those are positions that are funded at the SU or they're contracted at the SU, but they're not necessarily funded by the SU. So, for example, we may have a position who is a full-time position, but they're 50% funded through the SU, and the other 50% is local. So that 50% that's local will be part of the bill back budget. That information is shown to you both at the SU level when we create the SU budget, and then shown again to you at the local budget when we create the local budget. So there is no tuition at the SU level, so it's not really relevant. When we look at Corey Valley, we can talk about that topically, how it relates to Corey Valley and the tuition that each school is bringing in, or each town.
I guess I was thinking of the special ed piece, maybe in terms of if there are kids that we tuition that are special ed. So that would be at the SU, and you just said you were listing that that's already part of what we're going to look at anyway, right?
Are you looking for students that we tuition out or tuition in?
Tuition in.
So students from, say, Fairhaven that are coming to one of our schools that are special ed.
Yeah. Is that SU or is that local?
That would, if it's special ed related, it would be SU. And we can get that information from Christine.
Okay, great.
The only other thing, Louis, it would be under special ed, but the number of staff members and the rough number of special ed, how many services we give out, whether that's increasing, going down. And usually I know Christine does that.
Yeah, based on the total child count that we have and the number of staff and then the average, yeah. Yeah, we're in the midst right now of working on the service plan, which has to be completed for October 15th, which is in essence the special ed budget. That's what we have to submit into the state. So all of that information and all those numbers are compiled for that.
So one thing that Christine and I have been discussing over the last few weeks, and in relation to developing the budget. So last year there was a presentation given on adding one of our own programs for. Christine, you can feel free to. Well, I'll let you talk about the specifics.
We had talked. Yeah, last year about the need to add a program for the students that really didn't do well in the general education realm, and looking at, and obviously one of the big pieces of that was there was some extra staffing to it and the cost of that, but then also location and finding a place to house that program, which continues to be an issue. And obviously it's even more so right now, depending on not knowing where we'll end up next year, but space is even at more of a premium now in all of our buildings. So just, again, kind of didn't want to go through that process of kind of putting together that if we really are not seeing that as something we want to move forward with or try to put in place for next year.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of the board. I'm just so uneasy right now with the budget for the next couple of years. I don't know if it's the time to take on a more of expense. It would depend on the need. And I know that the need is there, but it was more like if we build it, more will come. Unless we're in a desperate position, I personally don't think this is the year to try it again.
Yeah. And to be honest, the hardest thing is finding location. It really is. Locations are tough. To have it be where it's not so isolated and where you really, ideally you want it close to one of our schools and where you've got some administration there. And that's a challenge right now.
If I recall, when it was brought to the board, there was the funding issue part of it, and I think that a lot of it could be funded through federal funds, but after that, it was never followed through with because there were so many variables to that, and so I think that was the huge issue is if that most of it could be paid for with those funds because it is special ed, then it would be a very low cost to the SU. Is that correct?
Well, the portions that could be reimbursed, right. So we would get the reimbursement or whatever 56% say on any of our special ed expense, which we get. So you're taking that out. But the piece that at the time what we had looked at and the actual the rental of the building was not. And there was this whole piece of waiting until we get into what's the Act 173 here when we go to block granting.
Oh,
and then that'll be looked at differently.
Okay.
Maybe this is the time to, we know that Green Mountain College is sold, and that's a pretty huge piece of property, to reach out and see if there is a building there or a space there. Not that I think you should put a presentation together for us this year.
Yep.
I think that would be, in my opinion, a waste of your time. I just don't think that, and I don't say that to be dismissive. I just think that's where we're at, and I don't want you to dedicate time to something that's just kind of a filler in a meeting. But I do think it does lend the possibility to maybe reaching out and seeing if there is space there, what that looks like, if they can give you a rough cost, what kind of renovations. I mean, that to me, that's really before you put a presentation together. We need to have an idea of where it could be. If that's something that was in the realm of possibilities, I mean, that could kind of be, perfect for us, because it's near one of our schools and it's not isolated. And so maybe that, I would suggest that maybe this year, reaching out and seeing if that's a possibility and maybe starting from there.
And we did talk about that as knowing that they're doing that. So I will look into that.
And that's why we brought it up tonight, because we didn't want to go through the work of putting a proposal together and have it not be even considered. So I think that's good feedback to get from you, and we will continue to work on it internally. And when we are ready to move forward with it, we will maybe for a future budget.
Do we? What's our child count for residential placement or out of district placement? Because we aren't
don't have programming.
Yeah.
I've got to get back to you on an exact number, Clarence.
Some of those are the kids that a program like this would. Part of it's a cost avoidance that you got to weigh in, along with a better program for the kids. It's a double-edged sword. I'm not really in favor of creating a new program unless somebody can prove to me that one is better for the kids and two, it's going to save us money. It's got to fit both criteria for me to support it. So I agree with what's being said, that this is probably not the year to jump into something like that, unless it's real easy to show that there's one, there's a need, and two, it's going to save money. And I, just on the general principle, I don't know as we can say that right now.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, but I will definitely get those exact numbers to you.
All right, and then the other piece that I wanted to bring up is, so in the current budget, FY21, we have a open tech position which the board has told us not to fill. So I have two questions. One, looking at next year, whether we should put that into the budget for next year, and two, with the increased need for technology staff due to all the remote learning, increases in teacher laptops, student Chromebooks, there is an increased need for repairs and technology work. We're looking to get the board's permission to fill that position. We are hoping to be able to fund that position through that ESSER money that I mentioned earlier. So like I said, there's $446,000 there. This is definitely a COVID-related need due to the increased technology that we're looking to supply to staff and students and then have to maintain. We would be able to fund that position as long as we can get that approved. We would be able to fund that position through September 30th of 2021.
So I think this is a conversation the board needs to have in executive session. This is there's a personnel component issue to this, and I think Chris maybe will speak to this in executive session. And what's the time frame for you receiving the okay or approval to pay through that other fund? And when you say approved through the other fund, does that include everything, or does it simply just include salary?
So the ESSER money is going to work similar to like our title money. It runs through our grant management system. And Lisa Madison is the one that manages that. So she would prepare the grant application. She'd have to put it in investments. And then that would have to be approved by the state, similar to how our title staffing gets approved. It would cover all expenses related to that position. So salary, benefits, any benefit related costs such as health insurance, retirement, all that.
So after September 31st, then it would become our expense in 2021.
Correct. So the board would have to decide if it's something the board is willing to support. We would have to put that into the budget for next year if that position was going to continue. If the board did not want that position to continue, we would just leave it out of next year's budget and just fund it through September 30th. So funding it through September 30th does get us through this year, which it should be the heaviest load this year. And then it also gets us through the summer, which is when a lot of the maintenance on the machines is done and a lot of the work in schools is done. And then also through the opening day of school, and then, like I said, to the end of September. So we should be on our way through the school year at that point.
Okay. I think this is a subject matter the board will take up in executive session, and we will have, Chris can give you an answer for that tomorrow morning. Is there anything else that the board would like to request from Louis or Christine in preparation of the SU budget? And if you think of something that from last year, looking over your notes or something like that, that you think would be helpful, please email Louis and let him know so that when we come to the meeting in October, we have the most information that we can use since we are in such a tight time frame for the SU budget. All right, Louis, did you have anything else for us?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, school reopening update. Chris, I feel like you covered that in your superintendent's report.
Yes.
Okay. grading task force that Lisa kind of covered. Policy committee update. Clarence is the chair of that committee. Would you like to provide an update, Clarence?
Yeah, just briefly, we met actually yesterday. We're going to be meet every couple of weeks, so we get some things. We have 2 or 3 policies that are going to be warned for your review at the local level in your board meetings this coming up in this month, and we're going to be digging into 3 or 4 other policies that we're working on that are going to take a lot of doing. The equity policy, the flagpole policy, the Title IX policy. I think that there's one more. I'm forgetting it. It doesn't matter. But the committee's meeting and we're moving ahead. We're going to try to meet every couple of weeks for a while till we get a handle on things, so we can get stuff out, get it warned, get it out for the local boards to have their input on, and so we can adjust the policy if need be, and then we can send it back out for final approval, and then final approval at the SU to make this stuff work. Anyone have any suggestions about any policies that come out? Feel free to email us. Get a hold of the superintendent, and he can direct it to us so we have the stuff to work with. But other than that, we're going, and we'll keep everybody informed. But you will be seeing some policy work hitting your local boards this coming months, and it'll be ongoing for a few months.
Great, thank you. Tech report, Greg, Infinite Campus. There was a timeline in everyone's packet. Are you with us, Greg?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
Hi.
So do you want to go over the timeline?
Yeah, I thought it would be helpful because from listening to the previous board meetings, I think there's a little bit of confusion as to how we got here and how, especially for new board members, what does what and why. I guess it's 10 years ago now when I came to the RCSU. Each building had their own kind of student information system that was installed on a server in each one of the buildings. And so when it all consolidated, there was kind of a committee at the time, and Infinite Campus was chosen as the student information system. And going forward, we just threw more functions into that because of it had a module design similar to PowerSchool. So it's now our emergency notification system. It does discipline, food service, obviously grading, transcripts. It manages all our point of sale machines. So when a student checks out of, the cafeteria, it drives all the point of sale machines so they can put their code in and things like that. Assignments. It is now the repository of all of our state reports. So all the data in there then gets kind of massaged by Milt Gardner, and all of our state reports are all sent at the same time, and they're sent through the reporting functions of Infinite Campus. And these reports are very detailed, sometimes, 22, 23 spreadsheets worth of data, very complicated. And now Infinite Campus does all of that. So in the first page, you see like the early days of Infinite Campus. And then when we post-merger, Rutland Southwest had a similar situation where they had web to school in each one of the different buildings, and it did certain things, and they had other products that did kind of all the other functions. And so we eliminated all those other products. I think there was like 6 or 7 other products doing all different kinds of things. And so that was consolidated. And here we have today, which is where we were looking at modifying the transcript. We see that Jump Rope kind of took on a lot of functions because Infinite Campus did not have a proficiency-based grading book at the time. And so a committee was formed to find another solution for the grade book. And it was decided that Jump Rope would be that system. And so now Jump Rope does certain functions and Infinite Campus does other functions. I'm just going to share my screen for a second. And it's just a little bit of my own kind of notes. Does everybody see that okay? So there's mainly 4 systems, 2 of which have parent portals. And I think, Lisa, you had questions about portal status in various respects.
Lisa, me?
Lisa Miser, yes.
I have significant questions about Infinite Campus and the portals and how information is shared out, but I'll ask my questions at the end.
Okay. I think
Greg,
maybe.
could I ask you, I'm sorry to bother you, Greg, could you make this a little bit bigger, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did that help? I actually can't. It's a very bad feature in Google. I can't actually see the presentation that I'm presenting. Like, it doesn't show the window. So I just have to remember the keyboard shortcuts for magnification in Chrome. But so you have to like tell me if I'm not. So anyway, sorry for that digression. So there's, you can see the system capabilities. Obviously, the southern schools are not using Jump Rope, so they don't have a Jump Rope portal. Now, Jump Rope does not have a parent portal per se. You can log in with the student's account, the parent can, but they don't have a specific parent portal so that parents can see different information than the students. You just have to log in, and it was never designed to really be a parent portal. So parents can see the student's account, but they just have to log in like the student. Infinite Campus, you could turn different things on and off for the parent portal. And it's really not used a lot these days, simply because Infinite Campus is now really the only thing that you would get out of Infinite Campus would be your food service balances and end of year grades, which are reported to Infinite Campus. Jump Rope is the repository of most of the yearly assignments and grades. So, yeah, this is the kind of thing that has moved into different software systems because the system that we had did not do what everybody wanted to do. And at the time, proficiency-based grading, there was only really one software system that did proficiency-based grading, and that was Jump Rope. And that's why it kind of won out committee approval. At that time, Power School did not have a proficiency-based grade book, and nor did Infinite Campus. So, Lisa, does this address some of your questions as far as portal functionality and what it's on and off in different schools and such?
No. So what I would like is to know moving forwards, kind of like Lisa Matson did for the transcript and the cost to turn that module on. I think if we're paying to have these repositories and have these 2 platforms, we should be using them to the best of their ability. And we talked about students having academic plans and their academic program. And those are things that I think need to be shared and be accessible to parents. So, for example, if I go into Infinite Campus, it has my child's schedule, it has grades, It has attendance, food service, different things, but it also has the module option for the academic plan and yes, academic plan. And I think that's important. I think that there is no place currently, unless you reach out to a guidance counselor. If my child wanted to apply for something and I want to print something out, let's say let's say she was a sophomore and I want to look at what she took her freshman year and her sophomore year because we're looking at doing something else. The only way I can attain that information is by contacting the guidance counselor. Even though that module actually exists in the Infinite Campus, it's not something we're using. So I would like us to see what the cost would be to turn that module on and use those, particularly as we're talking about pathways and plans within the high schools. I guess it's perplexing to me. We pick these platforms and we use them for very little, just, different things, but nothing that's really beneficial to parents. And so a parent's kind of on the outside looking in. You don't have access to your students' information unless you request it. That information in other schools that my children attended was accessible to me. It wasn't something I had to request all the time. And the module exists there. And so those are things I would like us to be looking for moving forward.
Okay, that I just want to point out that that is not an IT decision. That is a building-based administration and guidance department decision, whether these modules get enabled or disabled or.
So
that there was no current request for that module or to be put on. I think guidance counselors have their own platform that they do professionalized learning plans and so on and so forth. I just wanted to clarify that there was no
currently at Proctor, that plan is handwritten. So that's not on a platform. And it's my understanding that to have modules turned on, not unlike the transcript, that we have to have a pricing of what it is to turn those on. Is that incorrect?
That is not incorrect, otherwise known as correct. Yeah, that's true. I would have to get a quote on that module for sure from Infinite Campus. Yes.
Okay, so that would be not unlike Corey Valley paying to make the upgrade for transcripts. I think that some of the advantages to having these things in Infinite Campus are across SU, not just high school based like the transcript. So I would like us to see what the cost would be to turn that module on for guidance counselors across the SU to be able to use that and input information. Are feelings, questions, input from board members?
Well, just let me say that I could likely get that quote for you by the end of the week and mail it out to the board and administrators.
That'd be great. Are there any questions from the board members about Infinite Campus or what Infinite Campus can do?
I don't have a particular question. This is Kristen, Greg. And Lisa, it's hard for me to imagine these things just because I have a young child in the system. But I guess it would probably be worth me coming to central office or something in a way so that I can see some of this stuff or models of it to get a better feel. Like, again, it was harder for me at the Corey Valley meeting to sort of be behind a somewhat substantial price tag on a module. And I'm not saying that they're not important. I think that they are, but I just feel rather not informed because I haven't had a student go through this. And I know, like, Lisa, you have a senior, so you've been dealing with this for a while. So I'm wondering if I could potentially just, I don't know, either get screenshots or I know some of the mock-up that Lisa Madison showed for the transcript was useful, or something like that. Just sort of my own, and maybe there's others who would want that info, and I can come and get it or whatever. It can just be to me, but I just think it would help me think again, bigger picture about how we can use some of these things, or how they are being used, and maybe other things that are possible.
We would be happy to run demos of all the systems for you. You can just come by Central, or just email me what your schedule is, and I'd be happy to accommodate it. Also, maybe, which would be helpful, is if I gathered a bunch of links to various videos that the software company wants you to see, so that you could look through that and see. A lot of them are like very specific to the thing that you're training on and stuff like that. But there are very general ones, and there are summaries and stuff like that, and I can get that information too.
He muted himself.
Yeah,
You muted.
sorry. Yeah, that was a mistake. It's very typical. Like it didn't matter if we have Infinite Campus or Power School. You call Power School up and you want to change anything. Yeah, I'd like that button to be green instead of blue. They're like, okay, we'll get you a quote, and then we'll have an implementation of the turning of the button, and you pay us, and then we'll do it. And then this is very typical. And so, like the quote that you got for the transcript is very industry typical, let's say.
Yeah, that would be super helpful. Thank you, Greg.
No problem.
And I know we're not going to be able to incorporate it in this year's budget, but I just think as we move forward, we need to be more proactive in the information that we're sharing. And, if I'm a parent and I look at Infinite Campus, and then I look and see what you're paying to use Infinite Campus, I'm saying that's a lot of money, and there's not a lot of information in there that I see.
Right, but also, if I could just tack on to that point, Infinite Campus is really, right now, it's kind of like the engine room of the data systems. It's not really the front-facing, oh, look at the polished, nice presentation thing. Like Infinite Campus actually is like the permanent repository of all of our information for the last 11 years, and then all our archived information. And then Infinite Campus feeds all of these other systems like Alpine, all of the other software systems that people sign up for, like Screencastify, Seesaw. It's like, it's doing a lot of work on the back end. And if you look at that's a summary of its system capabilities. It does a lot of things behind the scenes, such as all the emergency management, all the household information. The state reporting function alone is just an enormous thing. So I just don't want to give the impression that it's like this Mickey Mouse thing that doesn't look good. And it does have a very antiquated look, and it does have that air about it. But behind the scenes, it really is an engine room of serving data to serving its database to other systems. Just wanted to clarify that.
So I'm not looking for anything polished other than the transcript, and I think we've crossed that bridge. What I'm looking for is information so that we have parents that are more invested in their child's education. And I think that in order to encourage that investment, they need to see what students have done and where they're going. And when I can only see where we are right now, sometimes that's losing parents. And, when I can't see as a senior parent and go back and see what my child took as a freshman, what those grades look like, if she took our high school courses or 8th grade year, those are things that parents and parents need to have, because we want parents to be invested as they are helping students pick classes and move forward. And we talk about path. We talk about all of these kinds of things, and I understand what I sat through all the presentations of Infinite Campus and Jump Rope and all that. So I understand what it's doing on the back end, but I think what we have to show is what it can do on the front end to parents. We need to engage our parents in a better way within their students' education. And I think if they can't access information, and the only way to do that is calling the school, you lose parents.
That's a good point.
All right, does anyone else have any other questions for Greg? So if
Greg,
you could
this
just,
is I actually do, at least really quick, and it's Polteny related, so I don't maybe I'll just email you, but I just want to check in that I think there's at least maybe this solves since I checked in about it, but there's a pay portal Infinite Camp for food service Infinite Campus issue at Polteny. I don't quite know exactly what it is, but I guess it's been requested several times to look into it. Anyway, it's holding up our student handbook, whatever that issue is. So I don't know if that's something somebody can look into, but it's something about between the principal and the food service contact point, they're having trouble accessing through Infinite Campus specifically.
I deployed Milt down there yesterday, so
Okay.
I can check in with him and see if that issue has been resolved. But I told him to go there and meet with Kim Babcock and sort out all her issues. As far as I know, he's generally good at that. He probably sorted it out, but I'll get an update for you and email you.
Okay, yeah, we need to get our handbooks done, so yeah, thanks.
okay, thank you very much, Greg. And I think the timeline was helpful for people that are new to the board to kind of give them an understanding of why we are where we are with each platform. So I appreciate that. And if people hold on to that handout, I think that'll be helpful as we move forward. Is there any other business that the board has? Questions, remarks, agenda items for the next meeting? I think the next meeting, receiving the budget, historically what we've done is tried to focus most of our time on the budget and keep reports and other things to a minimum. So I think that would be the direction to follow. So we'll make sure the agenda reflects that. If there's nothing else, we do need to move an executive session for personnel. So we can excuse everyone except the board and Chris.
So
and
moved.
would the board like Lewis to stay or not?
Yes.
I don't know that we need Lewis
No.
for this.
Yeah, I
This-
don't
this
think
is-
so.
I have
Okay.
items. I have things to discuss.
Yes, we need Lewis.
You have things to discuss in executive session?
Yes, personnel related. Yeah.
Okay, very well. So we will invite Clarence, good Lord. Clarence just popped up on my screen. We'll invite Chris and Lewis to executive session, and we will excuse everyone else from central office and other members of the public. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.